Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the 6th week of Transformational Prayer, 55 weeks of it. And today's topic is wisdom. Lots flowing through this week since I received inspiration to look into this particular aspect of God and aspect of how we can look at our world, how we can balance heaven and earth, here. So with that, I wanted to start out with one beginning. And that is my little granddaughter. She's 4 now. But the first thing that came to me was wonder is the beginning of wisdom, right? We start with that as a child. We come to this earth with that, connected to that GPS system, right? That what I like to call God's perspective satellite. And when we connect into that, we're always connected into that as a child. And it's when we are experiencing and in that wonderment stage, that beautiful naivety of a higher presence that flows through us, we start to become in competition with the human conditioning, right? Our story, who our parents are, the story of our family. And as we move through life, right, we start beginning to collect a story that sometimes is the polarity of who we truly are in God's eyes. And so we have the struggle, right? So when wisdom came along, I looked at, I had trust for the first week. Second week was intention. Third week was patience. Fourth week was pause. Fifth week was detachment. And again, I can see a pattern that as I'm getting inspired to work through these things and learn more about myself in the umbrella of these concepts, I'm learning that wisdom is the next part. I had to work on the first 5 weeks so that I could be in a position in my own mind, in my heart, in my human brain and my spiritual brain, so that I could be congruent to understand what wisdom is, how to awaken my own self-awareness, because self-awareness is one of the cornerstones of having wisdom. And we have that wisdom as a child. We underestimate the wisdom of children, but we learn so much from them. And I'm learning, my grandchildren, both of them, are my greatest teachers at this point in time in my life. And it's a wonderful thing to have. The other thing that I have learned, let me see if I can get her down here. Okay, let's see. There we go. The other thing that I have learned is that for centuries, we have struggled with finding wisdom and what that meant. I mean, even back in the biblical times, Herod, the king, who was seen as being very full of wisdom, and the Magi at that time. And Herod was, very instinctual with his wisdom, right? Because we have the rudimentary brain, that the fight and the flight, right? And the thing is with Herod, he became threatened by the Christ child, right? People were talking, the news was out that there was some being of life upon this earth that could be seen as extremely gifted and extremely wise. And that threatened Herod, because he allowed the ego to come in, that human conditioning ego that I'm talking about, the one that I like to look at it as ego is, edging God out. And it's something that then what happens is, that rudimentary brain of fight or flight says, wow, I'm being threatened. And then we react. And we then put out an order to kill all babies under 2, right? And the Magi came along and they saw a bigger purpose. They understood the bigger purpose, that the world didn't revolve just around them, their safety. They had a higher consciousness and understanding of that, and a bigger purpose, bigger than themselves. And Herod wasn't able to get past that piece of human conditioning, and therefore reacted in a manner that was very destructive to humanity, right? And sometimes we even, I guess, have those types of things in our own life when we react. So wisdom is about taking and integrating the knowledge and the experiences that we have, and getting that deep understanding, self-awareness that activates discernment in us. And it's that constant knowing. You know, the Essenes, you know, they really actually decided that, you know, I am going to humble myself enough to know that I don't have all of the answers. And isn't it funny, you know, some of the greatest philosophers, such as Socrates, the truth is, wisdom is knowing you have nothing, that we only know any kind of thing that we can collect here in knowledge. Anything that I've ever learned is just, you know, my friend Pat and I talk about, it's a grain of sand. It's a grain of sand, even if it is that. Sometimes we even go, geez, I think it's a chip off the grain of sand of what we know. And so to understand that is wisdom. And to understand and apply that in your life can be extremely freeing, because that's a lot of pressure to have to know everything and to understand everything. And so through prayer, you know, we automatically default our computer system to the GPS of God, right? The God perspective. And we use our intention and our free will to ask. And that's transformation. That's transformation. That's wisdom. Let me bring this one up, and I'll bring this one down. And patience is the companion to wisdom. So I can see how being guided and inspired the way I am through these 55 weeks, you know, signing up to walk this journey and become vulnerable and share my experiences in hopes that it'll inspire something in you to make change, transformational change, however that is for you. You know, bits and pieces may speak to you. So I study like a lot of Carolyn Mace work. Okay. You know that I also study the Akashic Records. So a lot of that work works together and helps me understand that those things. So with that being said, you know, the grace of wisdom is, you know, expresses itself through revelation. You know, in hindsight, you know, we're always extremely reactive. So when I was starting to, you know, ask God, like, you know, why is wisdom important? You know, show me. I want to understand what wisdom truly is and what it truly means to me, and how I can learn from it. And so I go put my little owl friend up here, because, you know, the owl is very representative. How do I get rid of that one? Oh, I see. Sorry. The owl is very representative of knowledge and wisdom, right? You know, it's perfect place is in the shadows. That's when it works in the darkness. It's not afraid of the darkness. Its eyes illuminate within the darkness. So I find that very fascinating, right? And so how it helps me is, you know, prayer helps us. A lot of times we are very reactive in life. That's human conditioning. That's, you know, the fight or flight or freeze. I'm a freezer. I don't run. I don't fly. I don't even want to fight, but I definitely freeze whenever I am confronted with any type of dangerous situation. So whether it's physical or emotional, I am a freezer, and I recognize that. And so how you react, whether you're a fighter or you run or you freeze, know that those are reactive patterns, and they're very helpful for us to react physically, especially if we're in danger from whatever that may be, you know. and the physical, a physical assault, a physical situation, right? That fight and flight really does help us. It gets our adrenaline going, it gets our body pumping, it puts us into the go, right? But emotionally, sometimes our brains can't detect emotion as a threat, right? But not a physical threat. So for us, it's important for us to use skills and tools such as prayer to help us come from a reactive state, right? So many times, how many times do we actually pray in a reactive mode? You know, whether we're fearful, worry, right? Automatically, we're sending up prayers. But how often do we get in the habit of praying to become proactive in our life? To actually turn prayer into something that can help us become more resilient with our own reactions to things, right? And wisdom comes from being that observer. And prayer helps us become an observer and become so self-aware, because it's that divine intelligence that we've sort of forgotten that we have access to. We think that through our conditioning that, you know, we need an intercessor, or we need some type of behavior in order to get access to God. And a lot of times, you know, we're taught that we go to mostly God when we're in trouble, right? And then, okay, what happens if, you know, shame comes in, right? And I was looking at shame and humiliation, and that's human conditioning. And that human conditioning actually keeps us from being proactive in prayer, because we don't think we can access them, that intelligence, that God intelligence, because we're bad, or we deserve it. You know, all these kinds of things. And so the human conditioning, it's very, you know, humiliation is one thing. You know, we go to God humbly before to be proactive in our life. But the humility sometimes, humiliation comes through shame, and that was introduced into the human conditioning as a way of to control, right? To control a big population, you know, the social norms, all those kinds of things. It was a way to implement law and order, right? But it really didn't work. It's not a very good, you know, concept. It doesn't move us or evolve us, hanging on to that. So humiliation through shame, and we have a lot of that in our society. We have fat shaming, we have religious shaming, we have sexual preference shaming, we have economic status shaming, we have intelligence shaming, we have the majority. If you're in the majority, they're shaming the minority. If you're in the minority, they're shaming the majority. Parenting shaming. We just can't get away from any kind of aspect of the human conditioning where shame is attached to it, right? So when you look at that and you are shaming others or shaming yourself, and, you know, like in society, if you don't do this, shame on you. I mean, how many times have you heard that? I heard that a lot when I was a kid. And, you know, that was one way that, you know, we learned in school. And, but if you don't fit in as a societal mom, shame on you. You know, if you're not the perfect, whatever, the Kardashians or whoever else is the authority that we've given, shame on you. So we really have to look at that and think about that. And we have to decide where the shame is coming from. And usually what's really cool is I have this little wheel. I'm doing an exercise with Saint Ignatius. He is a Jesuit, and he is also a mystic. And so I'm in this program with this little feeling wheel, right? Because that's what they use in the St. Ignatius exercises to get in touch with, to become more self-aware of where your operating system is, right? From your story as a kid, your traumas, your sacred wounds, your contracts for your lessons, right? So I remember getting this handed out to me. And you can find this on the internet. You can just Google feeling wheel, okay? PDFs will come up all over. Now, I have to admit, and I have to, you know, realize that when the woman of the group gave this to me, I hated this. I was like, this is the most stupid thing to have in a spiritual exercise place, and I don't like this wheel and whatever. But so after I got over myself, and really truly got over my own self. It took a couple weeks of refusing to even look at the wheel and basically thinking the woman was an idiot, right? Because I was angry. But my spiritual part of me kept prodding me and reminding me that I was having resistance and I was having fear and I was judging it. Those are the three cornerstones. I think three this way. I don't know how I'm going to get you in the camera. But anyway, three cornerstones of the Akashic Records. Those three things tell us that we are not loving and accepting ourselves, right? When we use those as our tools, they're defensive mechanisms. So with that said, I decided, I'm going to look at that wheel. That wheel is going to be my best friend. And I've moved considerably along a lot faster. So getting in touch with our emotions, not being afraid, using them as clues to where we feel we edge God out, right? Where the ego comes in, the edging of God out, feeling that we're separate from God, right? Because, we came from heavens and we come down to the physical, it's natural to feel that we're separated, right? Because we're in a very physical world and God is in a very unseen world, right? But ironically, he made everything here on the earth. And when we pay attention to nature and the things that are created here for us, there's a lot of clues of finding our way back home to him or her, right? To the source, however you express it. And with that being said, studying Carolyn Mace's work, she teaches a lot about, the wisdom. And wisdom, if you have wisdom, it's in this world of polarity. This world that these laws, right? We are governed by one of the universal laws called polarity, duality, polar opposites in our life. If we have happiness, there has to be sadness. It has to balance out light and dark, yin and yang, all of those. But so wisdom is about accepting that there's pain and suffering here on this earth, that we are going to experience that. It's not personal. It's part of a physical, spiritual law of polarity. And our lessons here is to find our way back to really actually realize how whole and perfect we are in a world that only points out our imperfections and that challenges us to see who we truly are. The only way we're going to discover it's like a little treasure hunt, right? And it's a great lesson. It's brilliant, right? Because through that, it's going to have the most impact on us, right? How to learn, and then how to learn and love others. And when we do that as the collective whole, the more we learn to love every aspect about ourselves, how easy it is to accept and love everybody else, right? We always look to others as a way of gauging who we are and what society is. And, it can be a very scary place. But wisdom also assumes that no action is intended by divine to harm us. Think about that one. That's a really big thing to really put in your heart and remind yourself, because I'm in the human conditioning. I have like this little sticker around here. I have the one that Denise Iwana gave me when she said, fear nothing, respect everything. And I wrote it on the back of a Christmas card. And I carry this with me when I'm doing my work, when I'm doing readings, when I'm teaching. This little card goes everywhere with me to remind me, because that's wisdom. This is like a really big piece of wisdom. And I appreciate Denise teaching that from her dad and the way she shared the story about that. And so anyways, no action intended by divine to harm us, yet all actions must include the ingredients of the human consciousness. And in the human consciousness is far different than the divine consciousness. It's a product of our every thought, action, belief that we have, through our own thoughts, created form and created reality here. And so it has to consist of the yin and the yang. That's what wisdom is learning, oh, wow. And the only way I can really work with that and really open my self-awareness to that is by becoming an observer, to be less of a reactionary and more of an observer, more proactive, and removing myself. And it's a little tricky, right? So that's why the prayer comes in, that whole thing with trusting. I have to trust that there is a higher guidance for me than what I can see in the moment of time when I'm under stress, under a circumstance of dealing with whether it's grief or worry is very reactive. Trust is very proactive. Fear is very reactive, and that one comes back to trust as well again. Judgment is very reactive, and the proactive opposite of that is acceptance. That's why this wheel was kind of invaluable to me, because I would identify, where am I sitting? What am I sitting in this particular situation? Where do I need to be? And if I was in a place of judgment, whether it was my own self or perhaps a situation I was in, a relationship, wherever I was struggling, wherever there wasn't some congruency, where I was in peace, how was I going to be resilient enough to change and transform that? And it was, I'm in judgment around this situation. I need to learn to accept what's going on, right? Or accept. And that would be my prayer. God, show me how I can move in this situation and become to the point in the piece of acceptance, right? Or help me to go through things with peace. How does that work? Resiliency, right? And it's really funny because hindsight, right? We always go hindsight. Geez, I made it through all of that. And I'm so busy in the state of worry, and I'm in the state of fear or judgment or resistance when I'm going through something, and I'm throwing up a prayer about, geez, I'm worried about this, God, help me with this type of thing. And all along the time, that essence and grace is always with us. But it's only in hindsight that we notice it. So we went through this situation, suffering, through fear and whatever. And we make it through, we take a deep breath, we look back in hindsight and we go, wow, look at this here. The presence of God was walking with me here, but I didn't even notice that I was moving through with God, but I didn't notice. I had the absence of peace. So wisdom comes with walking through these things, experiencing the pain and the suffering, but knowing without a shadow of a doubt, trusting that if I use my intention and my patience and I learn how to pause, and I learn how to detach to the outcomes and the expectations I have on that, then maybe I can walk through the wisdom and actually hear the wisdom that's coming, that's divinely already connected to me. It's about me shushing all of those other thoughts, all of those other fears. And that's how prayer transforms us from being reactive and reactionary in our life to, through our experiences and choices, to being proactive. And prayer is, where I go and I say, God, are you trying to reach me? Help me, better know what I need to do. Help calm all that around me. Show me. And rather than, oh my gosh, hello, God, I'm really worried, and I'm going to continue to worry because, only when I go to worry that, my religion told me that that's how the prayers get answered, right? It's such a, it's what we do. It's what we were taught to do. And it's generations, the hand wringing when we pray, and so we're half in it. We're half in it. We're not fully into trust. So perhaps the prayer isn't about stop the worrying. Perhaps the prayer needs to be, show me how to trust you. So that's how I look at things. And I want to tell you, let's see, I have this one here. And this one is about wisdom at the top. So understanding is a very feminine, yin kind of type way of energy, the feminine energy. The knowledge is very masculine, the knowledge that we create. So we're balancing. When we're able to balance both of them, our intuition and our knowledge, then we become extreme, we have that extreme ability to have some wisdom about things. And obviously it does come with age. And why is that? Because we're always constantly practicing to master it. We are here to master or to have mastery over the human conditioning so that we can go, oh yeah, there's where God is. Oh, that's where, happens to be. And again, I think I might have put this one up, and that's to acquire knowledge, you must study. But to acquire wisdom, one must learn to be the observer. I mean, I can hear like Buddha and Yoda from Star Wars, and Jesus, they all mastered certain beliefs. They were not reactionaries. They were proactive. They really thought. That's what Mr. Miyagi taught Danielson. We're not going to react. We're going to be proactive. We're going to give it some thought. And so then my favorite owl that you all might remember from in the 70s is, how many licks does it take to get to the center of the Tootsie Pop, right? And with that, I want to tell you, you need patience, right? I don't know about you, but I didn't have patience, and I bit that lollipop after probably about 100 licks. I think I might have gotten up to. So finally, we already know, and how they did it was scientifically. The Tootsie Pop is actually 2.5 centimeters, and it takes 2,500 licks. Scientifically, I'm sure a machine did it, to get to the center of the Tootsie Pop in the middle. So we think about how we are a society who has instant gratification, and even more so now than when I grew up in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. We can actually want something and click onto Amazon and have it there on our doorstep the next day if we choose. We have credit cards. We have all kinds of things that give us instant gratification. And so it's very hard to be proactive as opposed to reactive, because everything in this world flirts with us being reactive. Marketing, you name it, everything. So with that said, I'm at the 28-minute here. I think I covered everything that I wanted to cover. And I have a prayer. It's a very simple one. Everybody, I'm pretty sure, knows this prayer. And so I'd like to just take a moment and ask the Holy Spirit of God, hover over me. Grant me the serenity to accept those things that I cannot change. Grant me the courage to seek out your wisdom so I can change and be aware of those things that I can change. And grant me your counsel of wisdom. Walk with me, be with me, teach me, because I do surrender. I don't know everything. And that I'm humbly declaring that and welcoming you in through humility of knowing that I don't have control in the answers, and nor does anything outside this world truly have the answers, because it keeps me in comparison. So grant me your counsel of wisdom to discern and know the difference. Help me. And so that's this week. I hope you liked wisdom. I'd love your comments. I want to tell people that are emailing me, I appreciate that interaction. If you want, you can respond here in the comments of things that, you want to be granted the wisdom, something you want to be helped with. I mean, you don't have to get like all personal. Could be one word. It could be anything. And know that the energy of everyone that gathers here, even just in this moment and later on through the broadcasts, we're all in that collective whole. And to be able to be seen and heard is an important part of healing, right? So thank you for your emails and your feedback. It's really been helpful to me And please, if you would take a moment, if you are listening to this broadcast and you do find that these 55 weeks, this little journey is helpful to you, is helping you grow towards those things in life that you are looking for, and this manner in which I'm, introducing prayer, please share. That's how it gets to places that would like to see it, right? So I appreciate it. Thank you. And remember again that, I used to think prayer changed situations. What I have come to know is prayer changes me, and I change the situations. So have a wonderful week. Blessings to all of you. And thank you for joining me. Bye-bye now.